two before the one. Wisdom is water, I'm the daughter of the cannon fodder. Applied knowledge and insight, a born scholar. Look like a martyr to marauders like Tartar. Wise owl slaughter, whack MCs order applauder. Original woman, decipher the womb. Crown of creation, fruit of the planet Earth.
Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode of Wise the Dome TV. Today I have a very, very special guest, Gerald Perreira, who is a scholar, author, revolutionary, leader of the Organization for the Victory of the People based in Guyana. He is also an executive member of the Caribbean chapter of the Network for Defense of Humanity and the Caribbean Pan-African Network, also on the governing council of the Global Pan-African Movement. And so, Gerald Perreira, thank you for joining Wise the Dome TV.
Yeah, thank you, brother, for having me on your show.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's an honor to have you on. And so, everybody, the link will be in the description, but we're going to talk about Guyana, a pawn of U.S. imperialism. This is something that you wrote, and again, like I told you off air, very well written and very informative, and I think it's important for the people to understand. And so, in this article, you call liberal democracy one of the biggest cons ever invented.
Yeah.
Can you expound on that somewhat, and then put Guyana in the context of that?
Yeah. Well, brother, what is called liberal democracy? The very term is it's a contradiction in terms. But if you look at it, liberal democracy promotes the concept of parliamentarianism, representative democracy, and political parties. It is said that the more parties you have, it is more democratic. The arrangement is more democratic. But listen to one of the cons about it. Is okay, let's look at a place like United Kingdom. If you look at the evolution, the political development in Britain, and you go back to the days of the Glorious Revolution and then the struggle with Oliver Cromwell, the execution of Charles I, and then you had the Restoration with Charles II and so on. And then you look at the evolution of the Parliament and all of that. There was a compromise. Now, for example, you elect a prime minister in Britain, whether the prime minister comes from the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, or the UK Reform Party, or whichever party, or the Conservatives. But the king that has just replaced the queen holds a very powerful position, not electable, hereditary. Now, if you look at it, you speak about His Majesty's Armed Forces, His Majesty's Postal Service, but the monarchy is not elected. So to have a monarchy and a representative, what you call it, democracy at the same time, is a contradiction. Because democracy, if you look at it in terms of the word as such, in its Greek origin, I'm not talking about the concept now, because the concept of democracy has its roots in Africa. There were African societies. I'll get back to this. Let me just digress a little. How did African societies mobilize the people without political parties? You had the Palava system, the Kabele system, and other systems where people came together in communal assemblies, whether it was at the tribal community level or what, and they participated in the decisions that impact their lives. It did. So when the Greeks spoke about democracy, people like to talk the minute you hear about democracy, it's originated with the Greeks. But if you look at the so-called democratic state of Athens, women were not able to vote. Women did not participate in the assemblies. And you had slaves. You
Right.
had slaves. So they were outside of that process. Okay? It was free people, especially and those who had land, property owners. The liberal democratic arrangement today is you can elect political. The liberal democracy came hand in hand with capitalism as a social and economic formation. Good. Of the system.
I'm sorry, you kind of froze up, and then I wanted you to go back just a little bit whenever you were talking about capitalism being
Yeah.
formed out of this formation.
Yes.
Okay.
So you notice that all the capitalism goes hand in hand with this liberal democratic arrangement. Now, take for example in Britain, you have roughly about 1% of the population, a very wealthy section that controls the means of production, distribution, exchange, the financial system. When you go to the polls, you do not vote out that economic elite. You don't vote them out. You don't change the system. You change the managers of the system, which are the parties. And you don't have to be a communist or a left winger to agree with the Communist Party. The Communist Party of Britain can never win an electoral, come to power by the electoral process. They cannot. If you go back and you look at Britain in the days of Harold Wilson, there was a whole plot, right, to railroad the Labour Party then. It's the same thing with the United States. You have America is essentially a one-party state. But people say, well, how you mean it's a one party? You have multiple parties. Yes, but if you look at the Democrats and the Republicans, both parties are expression of a particular class. Don't forget, the Democratic Party was the party of the slaveholders, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You go back and you see it. But those two parties are manifestations of the bourgeoisie, of the ruling class. They might, you enjoy the support of the masses, but that doesn't determine the class character of those two parties. Good? Because at the end of the day, the masses constitute the 99%. And you need their support. So you manufacture consent, because no ruling class rules by force and coercion alone.
Right.
You have to get the masses to buy into the ideological state apparatus, as Louis Althusser calls it. So through the media, through the education system, and to a large extent through the church, you get people to subscribe to bourgeois ideology, which is the dominant ideology. And you don't have to be a Marxist to agree with Marx, that the dominant ideas of a society are that of the ruling class. So the Republican and the Democrats, regardless of which one is in, it's still the capitalist system. You have what now Trump and them are calling the deep state. Well, as early as 1956, C. Wright Mills, the political sociologist, wrote a book called The Power Elite. And he was able to show the nexus involving the military, big business, and the political elites. And he arrived at the conclusion, he said, Americans believe that by going into the polling station or voting, they have a say. But it's an illusion. Right. Because you change the parties, the managers of the system, but you don't vote out the real power brokers. And Michael Parenti referred to it as democracy for the few. Sheldon Wolin, the late political theorist, speaks about America being he speaks of inverted totalitarianism. Right? All the similarities, but well disguised compared with Nazi Germany. Right. And now what used to be the friendly face of fascism, the democratic face, you are seeing the openly hostile and naked face of fascism. Because as Mussolini said, fascism is that bond between big business and the political and the state. And you see that. You see that. So the liberal democratic arrangement where you vote for political party or representatives, but then you look at it, millions are marching in Europe, in Western Europe, and no one is listening to the voice of the people. You said that you represent the people, but you don't represent the people. You do not. And today now people are talking about the end of their books now at the end of representative democracy, the end of politicians and all of that. Because remember, in the African tradition, and this is what Libya had under Gaddafi, the theorists, they're saying that every one of us, once we live in a society, right, we are part, each and every one of us is a politician with a small p, right? Because politics affects all of us, and therefore we must have a say in the decisions that affect our lives. Good. But what happened, the liberal democratic arrangement, you create a class of professional politicians,
right,
who are basically careerists and opportunists. And those people further their own interests and the interests of the class that they represent. And that is why I never like the term politician applied to people like myself. I don't. I reject it. It's a bourgeois concept. It's a bourgeois construct. I see myself as a political activist, as a revolutionary, fighting for radical social and economic change and for the empowerment of people. We in the Organization for the Victory of the People, the groups in the Caribbean like this, we tell people, I always say to people we work with and to the youngsters, anytime a politician come to you and say that they're fighting for you, look at them in the face straight up and tell them, you're a liar.
Absolutely.
Because no one, the same way I cannot eat for you or sleep for you, why should I represent you? The best representative of you is yourself.
Right.
Therefore, we need to create new mechanisms, new organs to express where the people can participate in the decisions. Maurice Bishop, many years ago, Maurice Bishop created an organization called Movement for the Assemblies of the People. That's right. It's in our book. That's right. And it was based on C.L.R. James, the great Caribbean thinker C.L.R. James' argument, the end of party politics. And he wanted people, it was meant to be a grassroots movement in creating assemblies in every area and allowing for popular participation. And they established what was called the Center for Popular Education. Then, for some reason, years after, the Movement for Assemblies of the People merged with JEWEL, Joint Endeavor for Welfare, Education, and Liberation, and with Bernard Core's group, OREL, Organization for Revolutionary Education and Liberation, and they formed the new JEWEL movement. The Marxist-Leninist tendency won out. And they moved away from this whole thing about building a popular movement at grassroots level to this Leninist party, the new type, the Vanguard Party. And we know the problem with that is because the Vanguard end up becoming a substitute for the activity of the masses. So you get all this rigid, the leadership top down, and it leads to alienation. The people are alienated from the process and so on. And we know what happened to the Grenadian Revolution, but that was the main thing. It was destroyed by the United States. But we don't go down that. So liberal democracy, if you look at it, across Africa, where it has been implemented. Name me one country where it has worked, right? And it has not. It has not, with that arrangement. Africa is the wealthiest continent on the face of the earth.
Right.
And you look at Africa, right, where you have that liberal democratic arrangement. And you know what it does? It cannot build social cohesion and unity. Good. So it creates a lot of divide and fractured society. Let me tell you, for example, look at a place like Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
You have a party named the People's Democratic Party.
Right.
But then the leader of the party might be Hausa. I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The general secretary might be Hausa. And the treasurer might be Hausa. Hausas are going to vote for that party. You're not calling it the Hausa People's Party. It's called the People's Democratic Party. But it's based, they draw from the Hausa people.
Right.
Right? And it goes on and on. Now, Kwame Nkrumah understood. He and Sekou Touré said, look, they created the mass party. Kwame Nkrumah created the Convention People's Party, and Sekou Touré created the Democratic Party of Guinea. So these parties were meant to be mass-based parties involving all sectors of the society, right? With peoples, with councils, and so in every area. What I'm saying is the mass party was far better. It brought more stability in Africa than the minute you start getting all this multi-party nonsense. Let me give you an example. Do you know when SWAPO, Southwest African People's Organization, was fighting, led by Sam Nujoma, was fighting for independence of Namibia? There were only two organizations, really, SWAPO and one called SWANU, Southwest African National Union, both left-wing.
Mm-hmm.
When SWAPO came into office, SWAPO took power. The liberation movement got power. When they held the first general elections, do you know how many parties contested the first general elections? About 25.
Wow.
About 25. These parties were not around where they were fighting.
Right.
Then about 3 years after, by the time they had the third election, 110.
Wow. And only two whenever they were fighting.
Yeah, 110.
Wow.
So what is happening? You get all of these Western institutions like the International Republic Institute, the NED, National Endowment for Democracy, some in Germany, the Adenauer Foundation, and these organizations in Germany, United States, and Britain. And now you have the Soros Foundation. They go into these countries, and to weaken the mass party, the main party, they create all these parties, a multiplicity of parties, to take away the votes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do. And if you look at it, ever since you had the implementation of multi-party politics in Africa, it just brought chaos.
Yes.
And you're seeing it. So after all these years, and going along, accompanying the liberal democratic arrangement is this neoliberal economic model.
So here's what happens a lot of times. People that push back on this kind of idea, and they'll talk about Nkrumah in this manner, but they'll say, hey, these mass parties lead to dictatorships. That's what they like to say a lot of times. What are your thoughts whenever they I guess use that as an excuse?
Yeah, that is the liberal democratic nonsense. Because look, I read and studied Marx. You don't have to be a Marxist to accept some truth. Marx said that all societies are dictatorship. The Americas, the dictatorship, the hegemony of capital.
Absolutely.
So what you have in Britain is a dictatorship of the capitalist class of the bourgeoisie.
Absolutely.
That's the class. That's the class that controls the state apparatus. The intelligence agencies, the judiciary, the courts, and everything is there to protect that class.
Right. Right.
That is what it is. That
Absolutely.
is what they did. It's the same thing. When last did you know that you look at that and then you compare with China, for example? China executed a billionaire.
Mm.
Was a millionaire.
Mm.
I know of no millionaire that was executed in America, much as a billionaire. And you
Ever.
look at who go on death row. You look at which class they come from, and you look at the color of their skin,
Right. Right. Right.
and it tells you something.
Mm.
So it's an illusion. It's nonsense, because at the end of the day, and the real substance of democracy is economic democracy, right? I don't want to hear about the right to assemble, the right to free speech, and
Mm-hmm.
all of that, but I don't have the right to eat,
Right.
or the right to work, or the right to adequate medical care. Because what capitalism does, capitalist society do, it has commodify all those things. Housing is a human right, but it becomes a commodity in the capitalist marketplace, something to be bought, sold, and encourages speculation. Healthcare is a human right. If you don't have medical insurance and all of the hospitals, you suffer. Good. Education is a human right and investment in people. These are not commodities. They're fundamental human rights.
Right.
And there are countries who implemented them. Take, for example, the Libyan Jamahiriya. Medical care is a human right. I experience it. I know about not feeling well, leaving my home, and before I get to work, I stop at a small hospital, went in, no one, just, I saw the doctor, in less than a couple of minutes, was treated, right? Got my medication, everything free, not 1 cent.
Right. Right.
But
Wow.
never saw the house. There was a slogan, the house belongs to the occupant.
Mm.
So in Libya, there was no one paying rent.
Mm-hmm.
And even if, I'm just giving you an example, practical
Yes.
examples.
Yes.
Even if let's say you built 4 houses, yeah, you can build the 4 houses and share it among your family, but you can't rent it out. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you were to rent your house to a Libyan and they move in, you can't get them out.
Right. Right.
Because there's no law. So you
Right.
wouldn't be stupid to do that.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that they built homes. The
Mm-hmm.
house is a human right. Housing is a human right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in capitalist society, the profit motive is what rules.
Absolutely. Right. Right.
So, so they can talk about dictatorship. But if you want to talk about dictatorship, if Libya was a dictatorship, then that was a dictatorship being exercised by the masses.
Right. Right.
The Marxists used to call it the dictatorship of the proletariat.
Mm-hmm.
But in capitalist society, this liberal democratic arrangement, it's a sham, it's a con, because what you have is a dictatorship of the capitalist class.
Right. Absolutely.
And when you challenge that class, when you go out to challenge them, like during the Wall Street protests and all that, you see how it gets nasty.
Oh yeah.
It gets nasty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you see who the state backs, right? Like it's not for the
and if
people.
you go back to the years of the time, not only the Black Panthers and all of those, but people who start to see how that it's about the system,
Mm-hmm.
start to question it. You see what happened to the Black Panthers, to how they were executed.
Oh yeah. And they had the full weight of COINTELPRO.
That's right.
And
every progressive and left-wing movement. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. In the article, you also describe Guyana's political class as being tied to big business and the commodification of politics. What mechanisms, if any, do you see for breaking this nexus between capital and political control in a neo-colonial economy in Guyana or the global South or even in America for that way?
Yeah, very good question, brother. That's a very good question. You see, the thing about it is this, that what we have, let's take a place like Guyana, for example, and it's across the Caribbean, with the exception of countries like Cuba, Nicaragua, and so.
Mm-hmm.
And in Venezuela. That's why they're feeding the enemy.
Yeah.
See, when we got independence, a country like Guyana, we got independence in 1966. We had a president by the name of Forbes Burnham, and he knew Kwame Nkrumah. And he realized, he said, look, our political independence is meaningless if we don't have economic independence.
Right.
Good? Because that is what makes independence substantial, real. So the independence most Caribbean states obtained, like Guyana in 66, was what we call in the OVP flag and anthem independence. Walter Rodney called it briefcase independence.
Mm.
We have our own head of state, we have our own national anthem, our own central bank, and what have you. But we do not have control over the economy. We don't.
Right.
And a lot of big, foreign companies are in the country, and they're routing our oil, gas, and natural resources. So we call it investment. They come in to plunder.
Right.
Good. So at the end of the day, we still have a neo-colonial arrangement where the majority of people in the country, the 99%, are on the margin of the society. We have a concentration of wealth in a few hands, and it is getting fewer and fewer. Because what happened was, under President Burnham then, we started with nationalized strategic assets, the commanding heights in the economy. And he created financial institutions, sort of like agricultural development bank, housing, a bank for housing and so. And he was talking about making the small man and woman a real man and woman, right? In other words, it was a way, the approach was to democratize the economy, because the economy is concentrated in the hands of a few. Mining, gold mining, forestry, rice, but just a few.
Mm-hmm.
So irrespective of which political party comes into office, the big business people do well. Let me tell you why they do well.
Okay.
Because they give money, huge sums to the major parties.
Mm-hmm.
So whichever party gets into office, they have to repay big business by giving them tax breaks, concessions, contracts, and cheap land. And the losers are the masses who line up to vote for one of these two neo-colonial outfits.
Right.
That is what happens. That is what happens. And so the people believe that by voting, they just keep exchanging managers of what we call this neo-plantation.
Right.
Because we exchange the managers of the system, but we're not dismantling the system. So if you look at the Caribbean, for example, look at Jamaica, where 95%, if you already said 96%, of the Jamaicans are of African descent, are Africans.
Mm-hmm.
But Africans don't control the economy of Jamaica.
Right.
It is controlled by Jews, Syrians, and white people. They control the economy.
Same as Haiti.
You have a black prime minister, right? You have a black foreign minister. Yes, you have members of the cabinet who are black. But they're in office. They don't have power. And office and power are two different things.
Right.
You can be in office and you don't have power. And that's what neo-colonialism is about. Putting you in office, but making sure you don't have the power. But when you start to locate where the power is really situated, it's nowhere the power, and you challenge it, then you're going to find yourself in position like our brother in the Sahel state of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré is facing. Because that is what he's fighting.
Right.
Total decolonization, achieving true independence by bringing the strategic sector resources and economy under control to make your independence, your political independence, meaningful.
Indeed. What do you think about Traoré and what's going on over there in Burkina Faso?
Well, we brought out some OVP. We
Mm-hmm.
brought out some T-shirts with
Mm-hmm.
revolution, nothing less than supporting him. So all revolutionary Pan-Africanists, if you are fighting, if you're committed to our people's struggle for total emancipation, fighting against white supremacy, against imperialism, you have to support Brother Traore, as
Mm-hmm.
well as the other brothers in Mali
Ali.
and Niger.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
I listened, Brother Gaita from Mali. When you listen to that man, I can see sincerity
Mm.
overflowing. You know that these men are what they're committed to. And he paid tribute to the great Malian freedom fighter who, along with Nkrumah and Nasser and Sekou Touré, were some of the early Pan-Africanists. Modi Bokita and in Mali. And Ibrahim Traore is he's carrying on in that revolutionary tradition of Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara,
Hmm.
and Muammar Gaddafi. And the enemy is going to come at him. They are unrelenting. He said something. He said that they walked into his office. A delegation from France and yes, went into his office, right? Came right into the presidential palace and said to him, you know that this path you're going on, you have to be careful. You saw what happened to Patrice Lumumba
Wow.
and what happened to Gaddafi. In other words, he said they were threatening him.
That's a threat. Yeah, that's a threat.
Yeah, it's a threat. It's
Mm-hmm.
a threat because it was pointed out, and we pointed that out, I mentioned it in articles. I heard Minister Farrakhan talk about it. If you look at it, if Africa was to shut off everything just for 1 week
Mm.
to the West,
Right.
the West would collapse.
Absolutely.
It would collapse. And brother,
Mm-hmm.
when you read Eric Williams' book, great
Capital and
text,
slavery.
Capitalism and Slavery, or
Mm-hmm.
Walter Rodney, How Europe and Develop Africa,
Mm-hmm.
you know that there would have been no capitalist development in the West,
With
including the 13th state in the United States, without colonial genocide and theft of indigenous lands, one,
mm-hmm.
and the trade, the war, and capture and enslavement of captured Africans.
Absolutely.
Because it was colonial genocide and African enslavement that laid the material basis for capitalism to take off. And what people need to understand, that is one of the reasons that the West was able to lead over the existing Soviet bloc. Because you have to remember that the West had hundreds of years of free labor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Russia never had that. The Eastern Bloc never had that. Russia never had ships going to Africa and capturing Africans and building the colonies.
right.
So they were ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Our relationship to capital in the beginning is we were the capital. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. Africans were capital. That's right.
And
yeah.
So one thing that you did mention, you talked about the role of the United States in Guyana's elections, and we know that they interfere in the UK and France. They interfere with elections all over the world, right? And but can you elaborate on like specific ways you think the U.S. influences, Guyanese elections, and is it through like funding, sanctions, media, or like what do you think are some of the main ways they do this?
Well, let me give you an example. In the 2015 general elections in Guyana, there is an arm of the Republican Party called the International Republican Institute.
Okay.
They were involved in the elections here, promoting what they call this vote like a boss campaign. And we participated, our organization, the Organization for the Victory of the People, participated at the regional level. And I saw the way the Americans were interfering in the electoral process. I saw it, and I saw the way they install governments.
Mm.
They install government, and then they can remove you.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened what's interesting is, I am convinced, and there are people who know it, including the former president, but some people are just scared to say it.
Right, right.
One party was installed, and they felt that because they were installed by the Americans, they felt they could hold on to the elections, the next elections in 2020. They felt that because the Americans had installed them in 2015, 2020, they can try and hold on to it to rig it. And the Americans, the Trump administration put pressure on them, and they went. Because they failed to realize that the Americans have no permanent friends and no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. Right. So today you can be their friend, and they will dump you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they will take a so-called enemy and make him the friend, like in Syria.
Yeah,
the man that was a big terrorist is their ally. They got no, yeah, that's right. But apart from that, is they what they do every time there are elections. The parties that are contesting, they will meet with the Western embassies. They meet with the Western embassies. Only the Western embassies. They are United States Embassy, the UK High Commission, the Canadian High Commission, and the EU ambassador. And they ask them, what is your position on LGBTQ? And you have to incorporate it into your agenda and all that. This is what they do. And they go away. Because let me tell you something. We have some politicians. My brother, this is the term I use. They are absolutely scared of white folks, of white people.
Wow.
Scared of them. Literally scared. You know? Now, some of them have their children at universities in Western countries. They have their bank accounts and all of that, you know?
Right.
And they don't rock the boat with these people. But one like me, I turn up at a number of our activists turn up at a so-called consultation that Exxon was holding. And we blasted them. We told them that when the People's Revolution comes, it will sweep them out of Guyana along with their enablers. You know? And I expose, we're one of the most openly, one of the most vocal anti-imperialists, probably the only anti-imperialist organization in Guyana.
Wow.
And I spoke at a Palestinian rally, a rally in solidarity with Palestine, and we have one coming up on Saturday.
Awesome, awesome.
And you know, when I was traveling out the country, when I was traveling out on a flight from Guyana, on a British Airways flight going from Guyana to Heathrow, and then I was going on to Hong Kong and then on. And when I got to the airport, the British Airways flight, which was leaving Georgetown with a stop in St. Lucia and then on to Gatwick, they said they couldn't put me on the flight. And I said, why? They said because the U.S. border security said that the plane is flying over U.S. territory, which is the U.S. Virgin Islands. That's what they said.
Okay.
And I cannot go in it.
Wow. They
had you on some type of list? Get on the flight. I had to make arrangements to go through Suriname and then go on, other arrangement. But this is what they do. They intimidate people. Yeah. Well, I've been around. I've been an activist. I picketed, demonstrated in front of U.S. Embassy since I was 16.
Right.
And I'm almost 71. And I will continue. I'm like Kwame Ture, who I had the honor and privilege to work with in Africa. I'm going to go out like him with my boots on.
You know, I'm not
as I mentioned that name, brother, I can't let you. He was a great
That's what I was going to say. I can't let you go before you talk about that experience.
Consistent revolutionary.
Yeah, I can't let you go without. I mean, we still got time, but I have to talk to me about Kwame Ture and your time with him. I mean, he's been an inspiration to so many of us, all from different ages, all over the world. Like you gotta talk to me about that.
An amazing, my brother, an amazing human being. Let me tell you something about Kwame. You know, we used to make a joke sometimes in Libya when Kwame is visiting and he come to do work there. He was on the Gaddafi Peace Prize, the board of the Gaddafi Peace Prize, because it was an alternative Nobel Prize. Nelson Mandela was a recipient of it. The indigenous peoples of the United States received it. You know it. came with how much US dollars.
All right, yeah. All right. Right back. So yeah, if you can
Yeah.
you just bring it back just
So
a little bit?
Kwame was based in Guinea Conakry, so he'll come to Libya and he spends some weeks and so. And the minute he arrives, I'll go pick him up and we'll have these discussions and all of that work because he was part of the World Mathaba. The Mathaba was an organization founded by Muammar Gaddafi to bring together liberation movements and progressive organizations from all
Okay.
over the world. And they assisted liberation movements and so on. They paid a price for that. Anyhow, but Kwame, the thing about Kwame is he was that principle and he was consistent. And the thing about Kwame is he brought ideological clarity.
Mm. Mm.
And I could see it in a lot. I've seen when the AAPRP,
Right.
International APRPGC, anytime they issue a statement or any analysis of what is happening globally, I'll be honest with you, I've never found anything that I disagree with. They've always been clear cut with the analysis and very principled. And I always salute the APRP for that. But the thing with Kwame was he was always reading. He was always keeping up with things. And he's saying that revolutionaries always have to be studying and keeping up with things. So we used to make a joke when we get up. We said, we're going to go and knock at Kwame door at 6 o'clock and we'll catch him sleeping. Man, when you hit that door, Kwame's all dressed. Up. And there's a book and he's reading. And if you said, oh, Brother Kwame, I must read that one, he'll say, take it.
Wow.
He'll say, take it. So, no, when you finish it, no, he said, you take it, I'll get another copy.
Wow.
But apart from that, you know, and he was well loved and respected. And when he died, at his funeral in Guinea Conakry, the Sinn Féin, the Irish Sinn Féin, said, hold the funeral up, we're sending a delegation. Martin McGuinness and them. Sinn Féin sent a delegation to his funeral. The PLO sent a delegation.
Wow.
Different groups, I think the Popular Front.
Wow.
Groups of the PLO delegation was present. And other African freedom fighters from, there were diplomats from Algeria who fought, people who fought, and across Zimbabwe, all those countries, because Kwame Ture was not just in the United States. Kwame Ture was known and loved in Africa. And carry on his memory, and we continue the fight. He was extraordinary being. And last but not least, let me tell you something about Kwame. If Kwame was wearing a lovely outfit, because that is all he wore, whether it was Moroccan, and you said, Kwame, that's nice. He wants to leave it for you. I said, no. He said, well, the minute I get back to Conakry, I'm dispatching something for you.
Wow.
2 weeks after, you get a package of clothing.
Wow.
Of the best African clothing.
Wow.
You know, and he lived a very humble, very simple life. His sons, Kwame would not put his children in the car, his sons, and drive them down. He said, you could walk with the other students down the road to school, you know. And I can remember one time we were in transit in Morocco, and he had like a lot of candles, you know, these big. So I said, what are you going to do with all those candles? He said, this is my electricity. Because where he was his area that he was living in, they had not so much consistent electricity. But he chose to live there. He worked there, and he did a lot of work in Africa, and he died in Africa. And he's respected not just there, even in Cuba.
Right.
Very much respected and loved.
Indeed.
And we carry on, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. In the article, you also write about a border dispute between Guyana and Venezuela, and it's being used to divide the region. For those who may not know, can you explain what the conflict is really about? And then, in your view, how can Guyana and Venezuela resolve this conflict? And can you also talk about the U.S. interference? And because they like to exacerbate existing conflicts and then use that as an excuse to install their own regimes.
Yeah. Brother, this territorial issue between Venezuela and Guyana is a colonial creation. It's the same way between the territorial dispute between Belize and Guatemala. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, as anti-colonialists and anti-imperialists, we have to recognize that the Spanish came, committed genocides, slaughtered indigenous people, took their land.
Mm-hmm.
That part that you call Venezuela. The British, the Dutch, and the French did the same in Guyana. Now, this territorial dispute has been around for a very long time. What I am saying, people like us are saying, is, listen, since it's a colonial creation, we cannot argue without and ignore the history
Right.
of the British, the West European powers, Spain and Britain. But the territorial dispute between Guyana and Venezuela, it was dormant for years. But it's always reactivated by Washington or by the British when there is a regime that Washington or Britain is opposed to.
And then this
Let me
case
tell you what we're
Maduro.
talking about.
In this case,
Yeah.
Maduro, right?
Yeah. But years ago,
Mhm.
you know, the ruling party in Guyana, the People's Progressive Party, was founded by Chedi Jagan. Chedi Jagan was the first self-proclaimed Marxist to be elected, to come into office by the ballot. And this was long before Salvador Allende in Chile.
Right.
But here what happened. At the time, President Betancourt of Venezuela had an armed insurrection on his hand. There was a guerrilla movement. And Chedi Jagan was this self-proclaimed Marxist. So Betancourt was worried that the guerrillas will cross over and get into Guyana and use Guyana as a base with the support of Chedi Jagan, because Chedi Jagan was also sympathetic and supportive of Cuba. Good?
Okay.
So Betancourt told President Kennedy, he had a direct line to Kennedy. Good? And he was worried about this thing. Then the British and the Americans and the British intervened, and Chedi Jagan was removed. Good? He was removed from office. This thing went back to sleep, this territorial dispute. Then, when President Burnham, who was a member, who was in one party before he founded his own party, the People's National Congress, he was with Chedi Jagan and the PPP before they broke, right? When President Burnham was pursuing an anti-imperialist path, a non-capitalist path of development, he allowed the Cuban planes en route going to Angola to refuel in Georgetown. He was a towering figure in the non-aligned movement. We were the first country in the Caribbean, other than Cuba, to give open recognition to the PLO, and we had a PLO office in Guyana. Wow. So Burnham was carrying this non-capitalist path of development and anti-imperialist. So what happened? The Americans were pushing the right-wing regime then in Venezuela to invade Guyana.
Wow.
Because we have a place called Ancoco, the Guyana side and the Venezuelan side. In 1966, when we got it, the same year we got the independence, Venezuela invaded and took the Guyanese side.
Wow.
Annexed it. But Washington always supported Venezuela on the territorial issue.
Right.
Good. And they sold F-16 fighters to Venezuela to be used against Guyana. And President Burnham then launched the People's Militia with the motto, every citizen a soldier. So now you have dynamics have shifted and the tables turned. Now you have a right-wing, pro-imperialist government that pursues neoliberal capitalist policies in office. America's happy to be there. friend
Right.
because America's opposed to Maduro.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Right. Right.
You
Right.
see?
Yeah.
But tomorrow, if there's a change in Venezuela, and you get, let's say tomorrow Maduro's out, and there's a right-wing government in Venezuela, and the PPP government is out tomorrow, and a left-wing anti-imperialist is in power in Guyana like the OVP,
And they'll
the
be back
Americans
on
will go back
Venezuela
to
side.
Venezuela and come
Yeah.
with us.
Right.
So
Right.
this is what they're doing. And this what is sad is that the leadership, the People's Progressive Party, I just want to show you their ideological degeneration.
Okay.
This was a party founded that once proclaimed itself Marxist-Leninist. But now it is openly pro-imperialist and neoliberal capitalist in orientation. You know, after the Soviet bloc collapse, many of these so-called Marxist-Leninist parties lost their bearings.
Right. Right. Right.
But, and imagine the vice president, Jagdio, is saying that Venezuela is a threat to regional security. I mean, this is absurd.
Wow. So that's what the vice president of Guyana is saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
The threat to regional, and the other one that is going along with that song is the Prime Minister of Trinidad.
Oh, okay. So
right? So they are willing. They are willing, both countries, we are seeing what is happening. They are willing to allow both governments are willing to allow our countries to be used as springboards to aggression against Venezuela.
Right, right. That's how they do. They like to, again, like you laid out beautifully. They will align with the side that fits their best interests.
That's right.
Temporarily, but as long as like in this case, like you mentioned, if Guyana, if the leadership in Guyana is pro-imperialism, then then they'll be on Guyana.
That's right.
Side. But speaking of Maduro though, like what are your thoughts on him as a leader? Because we know what the West says about him, but what are your thoughts on him?
Well, I was invited. I've been to Venezuela and I've been to Venezuela a number of times before I get to President Maduro. This is important. Mm-hmm. The first time I went to Venezuela was in 1981. I went to a conference at the Central University of Caracas. Mm-hmm. And on arrival at the Simon Bolivar airport, one of the things I noticed was the absence of Afro-African Venezuelans.
Right.
When I did see any African Venezuelan, they were cleaning the toilets at the airport. Mm. That's where I saw them. The last time I passed through Venezuela, when you get to the airport, all those immigration officers, all the people at the cambio, the bookstore, whatever, African Venezuelans you're seeing.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So the Bolivarian revolution that was led by Hugo Chavez and continues under President Maduro has brought the indigenous and African communities from the margin to the center.
Love it. Right.
We'll get to that. The other thing is, for all the years that Venezuela had diplomatic relations with Guyana, before the Chavez came into before the revolution, every Venezuelan ambassador was Castilian, white Venezuelan. White. Mm-hmm. Since the Bolivarian Revolution, we've had three, including the President Ahmad, three non-white ambassadors.
Wow.
Including two women, Dr. Martinez.
Right.
Two women. That was never seen before.
Yeah. Right.
Venezuela's ambassadors to Africa and so on. Good. The other thing is senior commanders. They had in the military. The commander of the ground forces is an African Venezuelan. You only have to look at the huge demonstrations in the streets and those who are carrying weapons, and you see a lot of African Venezuelans.
Right. Right.
So the struggle in Venezuela is not just a class struggle. This is the thing about Latin American society. It's both class and color,
Right.
class and race,
Right. Right.
class and race. Because you can recall when Evo Morales won in Bolivia, they were saying we don't want no indigenous president.
Mm-hmm.
The reactionary right and racists were saying we don't want any indigenous president. Now, President Maduro, right? I have said sometimes, and I've been very straight on it, I said sometimes the language that comes out of Caracas can be counterproductive. I've said
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Do I believe on the issue of Essequibo, does Essequibo belong to Guyana? Yes. Why? Because once it is sad, once the baby, and I always say this, once the baby is out of the womb, you can't stuff it back in.
Right.
So all of these, but when Chavez came to Guyana many years ago, he said that let's put this territorial thing on the back burner. He said it's a
Mm-hmm.
colonial creation. Let's work together. Let's talk. Let's work together and help. Venezuela can help you with your oil and gas and help you. And you put this, forget about this territorial issue. But there were those who did not want it.
Right.
But when President Ali went to Grenada, Argyle, to have the talks with President Maduro, the British and the Americans were applying pressure on Prime Minister Gonzalez not to hold the talks.
Oh wow. Right.
And before the ink on the Argyle agreement could dry up and the President Ali was returning, a British warship was heading to Guyana.
Wow.
So you see what is happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Because America wants regime change in Venezuela. That's what Trump is pushing for on this whole nonsense about fighting drugs with a submarine and thousands of troops.
Right.
Now you're saying that you want to move, but what they're not telling you, I was invited twice to Venezuela, but I did not go. Let me tell you why. Because there's one flight. You have to go from Guyana to Trinidad, and there's one flight a week to Venezuela. And there were some problems with that. Other than that, you go to Panama and then fly to Caracas, way out and then back. But why I do not go to Panama is because the last time my wife traveled through, the U.S. border security in Panama pulled my wife over, pulled away her passport, and treated her like a criminal. And tell her, don't ever travel through here. This is what these people do. So I don't want to go through there.
Yeah.
Because, brother, I can tell you, I believe I'm a Guyanese. I reside in Guyana. And if I'm treated nasty or dirty outside by any one of those, a representative of those places, I reserve the right to retaliate against them in my country.
Right.
I make no apologies for that.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Because I can tell them when they're here, you can't come in here. Get out of here.
Right.
I said 2 days ago, Tony Blair is a war criminal. He waltzed into Guyana, and I'm hoping the next time he comes into Guyana, we will be in a position to arrest him. That we'll be in a position to arrest him as a war criminal.
He absolutely is.
You have Brother Malik Zulu Shabazz, who has not committed a crime, and he cannot go to Britain to give a talk. He couldn't even get to Canada. Minister Farrakhan can't even go to, what crime has Minister Farrakhan committed?
Right.
He cannot go to the Britain to deliver any lecture or talk.
Right. Right.
So if they're going to make it a one-way street for us, we got to make sure it's a one-way street for them.
Right. You know, a lot of this stuff that you're mentioning too, it doesn't make the Western news like that, right? Like a lot of people are oblivious to these type of things and tactics. And so whenever you talk about propaganda, media, and consciousness, how do you assess the role in international media in shaping the public opinion, of as many people as they can about how they interact with the rest of the world?
Well, before I get there, that is why I think shows like this, podcasts like this, what you are doing, brother, is very, very important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because apart from bringing the message, you are, I know, I'm listening to you, and I know that you are ideologically equipped
Yes.
to do this.
Yes.
And what you are doing is very, very important. This is
Thank you.
real. This is good work.
Thank you.
Now, you look at, let me give you an example of how the mainstream media, the BBC, CNN, and all of these Time Magazine, how they operate. When the war, for example, when the invasion of Libya started, the Western media was referring to the Libyan army, the loyalist forces, as Gaddafi's forces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? You see how they operate?
Right.
They are 150 tons of gold that Libya had in reserve, and the 160 tons of silver is referred to as Gaddafi's gold.
Right.
Not the Libyan people, the Libyan authority. There's a special company that you see how they personalize this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Gaddafi soldiers. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Mugabe soldiers. You don't say the Queen soldiers. You say the British soldiers.
Right. Right.
You see how they operate?
Yes.
Right? Non-white leaders like Gaddafi and Mugabe and those leaders are portrayed as dictators. Right? The International Criminal Court is for African leaders, and the Milosevics, the ones in Yugoslavia that stood up to them. Mm-hmm. So the Western corporate media they have an agenda. And that narrative, they start the demonization. They play a role in demonizing those leaders, right? Maduro is seen as though it's Maduro alone pulling the strings.
Yes, right.
One man.
Right.
That is how they do it. And he's seen as a dictator. The minute you oppose Western domination or you want to disengage, right, to pull out from their economic stranglehold,
mm-hmm.
they start to label you. Look at Mugabe. I mentioned this.
Yes.
When Robert Mugabe signed the Lancaster Agreement, they were celebrating him as one of the leaders of the African Renaissance and praising him.
Mm-hmm.
He was a darling. But the moment that he started on the issue of land, reclaiming the land, he became a demon.
Yeah.
He became a demon.
Yeah.
So they have this way. And, what's interesting is Kwame Ture mentioned it. He said the only reason they like to single out Hitler is because Hitler killed white people.
Absolutely.
He said that Hitler killed black people, like King Leopold.
That's what I was going to say. They don't mention Leopold.
They don't mention Leopold because he killed black people. Right. He killed Africans. If Hitler killed Africans, he would have been celebrated or kept quiet. But this is how they operate. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they always notice how they operate. When they're writing, you hear the BBC would say something like, according to a Western diplomat in Baghdad, or according to a Western diplomat in Beijing, or according to a Western diplomat in Johannesburg. You'll never hear according to a Chinese diplomat, or according to an African diplomat, or according to an Asian diplomat. So only white people tell the truth. So if you want to go, if you're going to establish the truth as such, you got to.
Right.
That is how. Listen to how they report.
Right.
Right.
That is how they
carry it.
And
that works in that subconscious. Yeah.
And even what they choose to report, sometimes they just won't say anything about it while they're over there doing the most nefarious thing. And unless you are people that are really involved in and like you mentioned about Kwame Ture constantly reading about these things, a lot of people simply just don't know or understand. And I think that kind of brings me to the next thing I wanted to ask you. You invoke Mao Zedong's concept of primary and secondary contradictions. And when we look at revolutionary movements, and especially even in the Caribbean, um, applying this framework today, balancing internal social struggles with the fight against imperialism, like how do you see that concept of primary and secondary contradictions being at play, within these revolutionary movements in the Caribbean?
Okay, let me give you an example of something. You remember Bob Marley
Mm-hmm.
sang the song in Zimbabwe when he sang the song about soon we shall see who are the true
Oh yeah, yeah,
revolutionaries
yeah, yeah. That's
because I don't like my brothers fighting. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that song was around. Yeah, that was
Africa
around
Unite.
when you had the conflict,
Was it
the
Africa
disagreement
Unite?
between.
Was it Africa Unite?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
okay.
That's right. And that was because there was this they had this conflict between Robert Mugabe's organization, SAPU PF, and Joshua Nkrumah,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because both Joshua Nkrumah was a freedom, both of them fought
Right.
against to bring down the Ian Smith, the Rhodesia regime. But then Nkrumah started moving in a different direction where he started accepting he was getting the assistance of uh, from South Africa,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from the racist regime in South
Wow,
Africa,
wow. Okay,
and
okay.
even getting some help from UNITA.
Ah.
And Mugabe had to move in and deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
Now I am saying that in a situation, if the two of us are residing in a country, whatever differences we have, we should see when it comes to dealing with the external, the enemy, imperialism, we need to see that the fundamental contradiction is between us
Mm-hmm.
trying to complete the national liberation struggle at home,
Right.
trying to achieve true independence, and imperialism,
Right.
right? So the primary contradiction becomes between us fighting to complete the national liberation struggle and imperialism,
Yes.
and not I am in the opposition and you're the government, and I see the battle between me and you as the
Right.
primary. No,
Right. Right. Right.
good. And Mao Zedong dealt with how to handle contradictions. So, for example, I know some Pan Africanists who were critical of President Mugabe,
Mm-hmm.
and another group of Pan Africanists were supporting him, and we had a big disagreement in the region. Now I am saying as a Pan Africanist that whatever shortcomings of Robert Mugabe, us as Pan Africanists and Africans must sort that out.
Right.
We as Pan Africanists cannot be running to Western and imperialist agencies to side with them or give them ammunition to shoot Brother Mugabe.
Right. 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 Right.
And
Absolutely.
that is what some of those, I'm not going to call name, but one of them is a very prominent academic who has written a number of books. And he was very critical of Brother Mugabe, right? He criticized many progressive African leaders. And I was not, and these, you look at these guys, they're able to travel in and out of America, out of the
Mm-hmm.
United States. They have no problem with their visas.
Mm-hmm.
And they go and lecture at Syracuse, at Harvard or Yale.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Good.
Right.
So you start to have question marks,
Right.
you know. I
Yeah.
have a problem with, I'm very suspicious. I've been around and I'm very suspicious of people who claim that they're revolutionary, who claim that they're progressive, who are this and that. And then I see the way they can waltz in and out and
Yeah.
no harassment, anything. I've been around long enough to know what's happening.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah,
as I just did a show with a brother who was talking about also how even mainstream academia here, the way they teach about our political struggle as African people is an extension of the COINTELPRO days, right? And
yeah,
so you're right. Anybody that you see um, the mainstream make their darling, then you have to question whether they are who they say they are.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
you getting back to the issue of Guyana. First,
Hmm.
the fundamental contradiction here now. Let's say that the government of Guyana was standing up and refusing to allow the United States to bully them, although we have differences. Let's
Hmm.
say we know that they're pursuing neoliberal economics.
Right.
But let's say that they stand up to Rubio or to Trump and say, no, 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 you are not going to tell us what to.
Right.
Then we would side with them in standing up against imperialism. We might disagree with the economics,
Hmm.
but when it comes to defending our sovereignty independence, we're going to put aside that issue and stand with you on protecting our sovereignty.
Right.
But you have allowed the Americans to trample on our sovereignty and independence.
Hmm.
So you're in the same camp. First, you are in the same camp with the enemy.
Hmm. Right. 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 And that, but that's what they America. I mean, that's what they do. They and they'll spot who they feel like they can manipulate and bring on to their side for personal gain, and
Yeah,
it's like it's the same old story.
yeah.
What one thing that I wanted to ask you into, and then first off, again, thank you for the time and coming on the show.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
Absolutely, absolutely. I definitely want to have you back. But one thing that I wanted to talk about, and toward a Pan-African future, for the people that are watching, um, can you just talk to them about the need for Pan-Africanism at home and abroad?
Brother, that's it, it's an objective that we have to pursue. We have to fight for it.
Hmm.
We have to fight for it. And we're seeing what you're seeing. We have their mass Africa is, as Brother Bob Brown would say, burning.
Right,
Uh,
right.
we're seeing what is going on in the Sahel states. Um, there's a lot of mass activity and so
Hmm.
organization and mobilization going on in Kenya.
Hmm.
There is a party called the Communist Party of Kenya. They've been behind a lot of the work you've been seeing, the demonstrations in the streets. There's the socialist movement of Ghana
Hmm.
with brother Kwesi Pratt. There is in Namibia. There's economic freedom fighters in Namibia, economic freedom fighters in Ghana, economic freedom fighters in Nigeria.
Right.
They were inspired by Julius Malema EFF in South Africa. There's EFF in Swaziland. So you have all
Wow.
of these the
Wow.
fighting. And the Sahel countries now are in the vanguard.
Hmm.
They're in the vanguard of Pan-Africanism. But we've got the Pan-Africanism we're talking about has to be the Pan-Africanism on the ground of the
Hmm.
people and the masses,
Hmm.
not these neo-colonial elites that talk, because every African leader will tell you he's a Pan-Africanist.
Right, right.
Ruto, any neo-colonial one will tell you.
Because Togo,
Museveni,
because the leader in
yeah,
Togo was trying to
yeah, Togo. Yeah,
yeah,
Togo
yeah.
wants to pull off a Pan-African Congress,
Right, right,
but it's being pushed really. They're fronting for Morocco.
right. Mm.
They're fronting for Morocco.
Hmm.
But we call that, what they're doing is they're trying to, the neo-colonialization of Pan-Africanism and the neoliberalization of Pan-Africanism,
Hmm.
because they're pursuing neoliberal policy. That is the Pan-Africanism that we're opposed to. That's the Pan-Africanism. It's nothing new. It's the
Hmm.
Pan-Africanism of the Hufebanis, and they are, those are the reactionary ones, the Bandas and all of them.
Yeah.
The Pan-Africanism we talk about is the revolutionary Pan-Africanism, the Pan-Africanism of Kwame Nkrumah, Jamal Nasser, Modibo Keita, Ben Barker,
Mm.
and Ahmed Sekou Toure, of Kwame Toure,
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, Muammar Gaddafi, Robert Sobukwe. This is
Hmm.
the revolutionary Pan-Africanism, the Pan-Africanism that builds, that aims for future,
Yes.
for united continent that is socialist. Socialist. And when we say socialist here, we're not talking about, we don't want to confuse this with what the former Soviet bloc countries had.
Right.
You know, because African societies, long before you had Bolshevik revolution and all, the African communities are social. Africans are very socialistic.
Right.
Our ethos very socialistic. African culture is the community. There was no individual outside of the community. The community is everything.
Right.
You know, you find yourself in community. This rugged individualism, this self-detached, atomized individual is a Western bourgeois construct.
That's a fact.
Right? And that is what neoliberalism is based on. It's not just about economics. It's an attempt to create a human being that is selfish, greed is good, anti-community, get what you could get. But the African system, the African ethos and culture has always been, right? One for all and all for one. And you look out. When Jesus spoke about, I am my brother's keeper, you're your brother's keeper, said that that is African societies practice that.
Yes.
That was there.
You know,
that was part.
That's why Dr. John Henry Clark said Marx was a Johnny come lately because African societies have already been.
That's right. Gaddafi said that too. Gaddafi said, hey, he said we didn't need Lenin and Marx to come and tell us in this part of the world. But he said, look, it's in the Bible, it's in the Quran, it's in our culture.
Absolutely.
Do you know that there are parts of Africa where people go out with their cattle? A man with their goat, an individual will have his food, and he will look around to find somebody to share that meal with him, rather than just sitting there and eating it by himself. These are true. These are things. But what I'm saying is, it has to do, and this is those of us, we speak about this African spirituality.
Yes.
Because one of the things is that we teach about this is spiritual revolution, that the cultural revolution, that while we are changing the world too, we are also transforming ourselves.
Absolutely.
Because we don't want to remove one set of oppressors and then we become like them.
Right.
So the spiritual revolution is, we understand in the spiritual revolution that while we are fighting the enemy that we can see with our eyes, there's an enemy that is invisible.
Yes.
And you know, in Islam teaches about the greater and lesser jihad.
Yes.
And people think jihad, the West like to report that jihad is holy war. No. Jihad doesn't mean that, you know that. Jihad is not holy war.
Right.
Holy war is a European invention that came with the Catholic Church with Thomas Aquinas and them. It's not. And jihad is anything, any effort. If you try to go out there and struggle to feed 10, 15 children when the day come, that's jihad. You know?
Right.
So so jihad is not holy war. That's a contradiction. And there's no holy war in Islam. Right?
Yeah.
Good. So there's a lesser jihad and the greater jihad. The greater jihad is the hardest jihad to fight.
Yes.
Right? That's the jihad against yourself.
Absolutely.
Greed, selfishness, personal ambition, and those things. The lesser jihad, you can see the enemy out there. It's easy.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Okay, I'm standing up to fight oppression and injustice. But what about you have to fight against your own nafs, your own self?
Yes.
And that's the hardest. Good. So we need to clarify things. So
that's a tough fight.
Africans are a very spiritual. We are highly spiritual. Africans are very spiritual people. And one of the things our people need to understand as Pan-Africanists, we hear people talking, you got all these white racists, a little bit about reverse racism and African. There is no such thing as African racism.
Right.
Because racism is about power. Right? Prejudice is something different.
Right.
Good. Now, if a white man doesn't like me or any ethnic man in the, don't like, that's their problem.
Mm-hmm.
But when that you are able to take that prejudice or dislike and institutionalize it, when you get power, political and economic power, and then you can decide whether I can live, die, or have a job, that's racism.
Absolutely.
There is no country on planet Earth, no country on planet Earth, where Africans have political, economic, and military power and use such power to dominate or to oppress other ethnic groups. Name me one.
Right. You can't.
It doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
President Mugabe, when he became president of Zimbabwe, Ian Smith, who killed thousands of black people, was still living on his farm 100 miles away from the capital. And he was attacking Mugabe.
Right.
And Mugabe left him there.
Wow. Right.
And he died a natural death in South Africa. I'm just showing you the moral superiority of the African when you compare with other ethnic groups.
Well, you mentioned, so I wanted to ask you this, right? Because
the others are not so kind to Africans.
No, I know it's like our gift and curse, because we are so kind sometimes that other groups like to take advantage of that, you know.
That's right.
I wanted to ask you because I think this is an important thing. So when Assata Shakur passed away, may she rest in peace. When she passed away, online, there was a discourse that started, and it was about a comment that she had made about whenever she was in the Panthers, and how that she felt like, you know, with studying Mao, Marx, and Lenin, that the Panthers didn't study enough Garvey and Black history and things like that. And if you go throughout the history of the Panthers, you know, at times Huey outwardly said, you know, disparaging things about it, the idea of cultural nationalism. But when we think about what colonization has taken from us, what capitalism has taken from us, what has imperialism has taken from us, it hasn't just been a thing to where our resources and our labor have been stripped from us, but our ethos, our worldview, our cultures, our names, our religions. When we talk about revolution, how important is us to be rooted culturally in our Africanity and begin to, you know, and understand ourselves as African people, and, you know, and I guess practice the concept of Sankofa, to go back and get what they took from us.
Yeah, well, you know, as Sekou Touré said, and Kwame Touré always pointed out, and we agree that your ideology comes out of your culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And before I get back to what Sister Shakur said, we have to realize, you know, one of the things is, you know, Western Marxists and those in the Communist Party in the United States and so, they said that Marxism, Leninism, and scientific socialism are one and the same. Right. And we disagreed with that.
Right.
Good. And Kwame Touré was always used to point out, he said, look, Newton didn't discover the laws of gravity. He observed something. Good. So Marx didn't invent this whole thing about the movement of history, dialectics, and all of that, and the use of what is referred to as dialectical materialism or scientific socialism. Marx observed something.
Mm-hmm.
But European Marxists like to make this thing like it started with Marx.
Right.
So
right.
I am a socialist. Am I a Marxist? I am not a Marxist.
Mm-hmm.
Because Marxism is a product of a particular culture and of the European experience. Marx observed certain things. He did. Mm-hmm. And there is nothing wrong with drawing or borrowing from Marx.
Absolutely.
But I don't have to be wholesale a Marxist.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Having said that, that your ideology comes out of the culture, Sister Shakur was right, because I remember when we were in high school in the sixth form, there was this debate. Huey Newton's book was not Huey. Huey Newton's book was out. Not Huey Newton. Bobby Seale's book, Seize the Time.
Okay.
And then there was Die Nigga.
H. Rap Brown.
Yeah.
So you said
Yeah.
there
And then
was
there
Caesar
was
Tom, Bobby Seale, and H. Rap Brown, Die Nigga.
yeah, and then there was Soul and Ice by Eldridge Cleaver.
Mm-hmm.
Now they were all Panthers, and there was a split
Mm-hmm.
between Cleaver and the others. Cleaver went to Algeria, and we know the rest. They were kicked out. Anyhow, but there was also this debate and big division and row between the Panthers and us.
Yes. Karenga.
Ron Karenga and others. And Ron Karenga and them had an argument which there was a truth in it. They were placing a lot of emphasis on the culture, the cultural revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not Marxists.
Mm-hmm.
They were not Marxists, but they were socialists, and they were talking about Kuwait and African socialism. And they were right. The Panthers were reading Mao Zedong and Lenin and all of that, but they were not focusing on the African cultural revolution.
Right.
So we had that. Right. But there were strengths in both.
Yes.
From both positions. And I think the person who was able to see that and bridge it without being trapped in both was Kwame Ture.
Wow.
Right? Because remember, he broke with the Panthers.
Yes, but you're right. He did bridge
with us. Yeah. Yeah. But you're right, and Sister Shakur is right, because we were reading, when I was at high school, we were reading Mao Zedong. We had the Little Red Book. We were reading Lenin. And if I had, at that time, 15 books in my library at high school, I didn't have, the only black writer I had was like the Panthers.
Right.
But we did, we didn't have Garvey. It's years on, then later on we started getting to Garvey. And when we really get reading, then you start to read Sekou Touré heavily and all that. Because remember, Sekou Touré and Kwame Nkrumah were not favorites of white Marxists and communists. You know that?
Right.
Well, when you read Sekou Touré and Kwame Nkrumah's consciencism, you see the great contribution they made, especially Sekou Touré, in seeing no contradiction between revolution and religion. That's a basic. But Sister Shakur is right, because the culture is a weapon.
Right.
And our ideology comes out of a culture. And if you understand the cultural struggle to find yourself, your identity, and who you are, what we're fighting for, then we are just seeing the world through the lens of others.
Right.
And I can go as what Afrocentricity and Maleficent Sante were.
And Marimba Ani said that.
Marimba Ani, that's right. And Yoruba
is our immune system. Our culture is our
That's right. That's right. That's an excellent book. Great reading. But yes, the cultural revolution, we have to, that has to be our the focus.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if the cultural revolution is that one, then the political revolution, the social revolution stands on shaky grounds.
Yeah, because that we're just going to be, look, the ruling class could get overthrown, and you're still going to have a bunch of black Europeans running, black people with European
Afro-Saxons, as James called it. That's
exactly.
right.
Afro-Saxons.
That's right.
Oh man.
So as revolutionary Pan-Africanists, we have to go to the cultural revolution is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brother Gerald Perreira, man, I just wanted to say this has been an honor, and it's been a great talk. And I would like to also obviously have
anytime, brother.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
what you have to do is one of these days you have to come. You have to come down to Guyana and come and do some work here, talk with the brothers, get some talks and
I
You
would
can come
love
in, Brother
to.
Dwayne. You can come and spend a couple of weeks, man.
I would love
You know,
to. I would.
that'd be great.
I would
The
love
young
to.
brothers, and so we have our classes starting the next group for our cadres. It's
Mhm.
good when the young ones and those who are joining our ranks and we are growing. It's good when brothers like you and sisters can come because you're involved in struggle and what you're doing and come and share your experiences, and
Mm. I
so
would
they
love
can
to.
learn from you, so they know that, look, this is one battle with different fronts, one struggle, different fronts.
Absolutely. I
So
would love. I
anytime,
would
my
love to.
brother.
I
Yeah,
would love to, and
yeah,
I'll definitely do that, and I'll be in touch
yeah.
with you.
Good. The other thing I'm doing just before you go is
Mhm.
that we have our educational arm is called the George G.M. James Institute.
Wow. Hmm.
You know, he was Guyanese.
Yeah, great scholar.
And there is nothing in this country named after that man after he wrote that
Wow.
book, Stone Legacy. So we
Wow.
named our
Mhm.
educational arm after him. And we had we have the third program coming up for our cadres. And during the COVID pandemic, we were online. But one of the things we're in the process of doing is compiling a list of people that we would like to talk to them on Zoom. And I'm
Mhm.
going to put you on that.
Oh, thank you.
And then I will notify you
Hmm.
ahead, give you time,
It's an honor.
and just post something that you can talk, like the cultural, you talk about the cultural revolution or anything,
Yeah,
and hear
absolutely.
from you. So I'm going to put you on that. We need you, brother.
At
Yeah.
anytime you need me,
Good.
anytime I'm there.
Yeah.
And so thank you.
So
And
yeah.
until the next time, man, free the land,
Stay
black.
strong, my brother. Yep.
You too.
Hotep. Salam alaikum.
You
Yeah.
too. Alaikum salam, brother.
Okay, my brother. All the best. Yeah.